Hi, I'm RPM, and today let's talk a bit about event-driven systems and how they compare to RPC or API call-based microservice orchestration, which is also called as declarative orchestration. Now, before we dive deep into microservices based on events, let's start with what a declarative orchestration is. Declarative orchestration is perhaps a pattern that you have already seen in your microservices, perhaps in your company, where you have n number of microservices and the way the microservices talk to each other is via API calls or gRPC based calls, right? But ultimately, it's a remote procedure invocation or a remote procedure call that is happening. Okay. A standard example from an e-commerce domain could be something like this. So you have a user who places an order from a web interfaces, and this order could go into say a order service. And the order service, once it does its processing, gets a state of order successful. It goes to a state of order being successful, and then it makes an API call to say a shipping service or a notification service, basically telling those services what needs to be done. And this is the declarative part of it, where an order service tells another service what to do. Right? These days, especially with the patterns being more clear, this might not happen very often, especially in the e-commerce domain. But there are other domains, especially the new domains, where I've seen this happen a lot, where the orchestration is purely API call based. Now let's dive deep into what could be the issues with a declarative orchestration. Okay. Now one of the thing to note is in declarative orchestration, you will have a service, a single big service that is coordinating all these business logic, right? And in the next slide, I will show a very fun name I have for these services. Okay, but I do see the existence of such services in a declarative orchestration world, right? Now, let's start with the problems of declarative orchestration. One of the key things is error handling. Okay, this can be a real pain when you're talking about an RPC or API based orchestration that's happening for a business logic, right? Where you have said in order to complete a business logic, five sequential API calls that need to happen, right? And in each one of them, you have to check whether the API call was successful or not. If it was not successful, then you either have to have a retry logic where you do a retry 3 to 4 to 5, whatever a number of times, okay? And then after you do those retries, if the call still doesn't succeed, you have to go back to all the other API calls that you have previously made and revert the state in those services. Right? It can get tricky. Right? Declarative orchestration gets really, really tricky. And the other fun things that you can think of in a declarative orchestration world is a problems like thundering herd where one microservice fails and there are these other microservices now constantly trying to make the API call to this failed microservices due to retry logic on their end. And what happens is due to the increased number of API calls here, this service, the service that failed, again goes down because it's not able to handle this number of requests. This is a common problem, right? So error handling can be like a real pain when it comes to the whole declarative orchestration world. The second thing, this is something also that I've seen happen a lot, where each of these microservices are led by different teams, and each of them, they will have their own contracts, they will have their own nuances, and in some very odd cases, they will also have their own authentication mechanisms. Well, some have, some don't have. All these things, you have to manage in your service. Another thing is each service can have its own protocol also. That's also something that happens. Like one set of services are on gRPC, the other set of services are on Thrift, the other set of services are on REST. That can happen, right? And it's a pain, right? So the RPCs and contracts for each of these consumers, sorry, um, varies, right? The when you have to make the call, you have to really think through the API contract of each of them, and then based on that, make the calls. And that means that in your microservice or in the microservice that you are designing at the point of time or developing at the point of time, you have to manage all that complexity and cognitive load, right? And that's a pain too. The third thing, again, this I already alluded to in the first point. Error recoveries are a pain, right? You have patterns like distributed sagas, etc., to do this, but implementing those can be a real pain, right? So again, where do these distributed sagas come is especially when you have a distributed transaction where you have five API calls to happen. All of those five API calls should be successful. If not, you have to revert all the states in the previous API calls that were successful. So if you have five API calls, and the fifth API call, there's a failure happens. All the previous four API calls, you have to figure out how to revert the state, right? Recovery from failures can be a real pain in these type of situations. Another thing I already alluded to was also the thundering herd problem, right? A service goes down, it is coming back up, but recovering gets hard because there are so many API calls now coming because of retry logic. Again, there are like patches for each of these problems for sure, right? But what if we can avoid them altogether? You know, one caveat is not all like one of the things to note about software engineering is there are no silver bullets. So there are places where declarative orchestration makes sense. Okay, especially when you want low latency in your end-to-end flow, declarative orchestration does make sense. So there are no silver bullet situations, but in majority of the cases in the current business logic that I've seen, you can do well better with event-driven systems. Okay. One fun thing that I want to allude to is this octopus service that happens in declarative orchestration. This you have multiple forms for it. It could be like a God service, um, n number of different names are there. But the key theme is this will be like that one big service, that has its tentacles across all these other services, and it makes an API call to one service, gets the response back, then makes a call to the second API service, API microservice, gets a response back, so on and so forth, right? And these are Octopus services are the de facto standard in places where you see declarative orchestration. Now, it doesn't need to be. Again, there are patches to this also. This is just, I think, the way people think in terms of code leads to these types of octopus services. If you have proper layering done in your system, even in a declarative system, this will not happen. Okay, but just that people in general think in, I don't know, I think people think in such a way where this is a natural outcome when you think in terms of API calls and getting responses back, because that is how you think when you're working in, say, a class or a function, right? You make a function call, get the response back. You'll then again make a second function call, get the response back, right? So those are procedure calls or function calls. When they are remote procedures, what people do is just use the same mental model, and thus you have this one service that is acting like the hotbed of doing this orchestration, where you can actually do it better with proper layering. But then that's a separate discussion, topic for a separate talk altogether. Now, this is a really, really interesting manifesto that I've seen. This is, if I recall correctly, being promoted by the Lightbend folks. That's a Scala-based company. I think they're behind the Akka project. And this is a phenomenal, phenomenal manifesto. And if we think in terms of these principles, getting like responsive, resilient, fault-tolerant systems becomes very easy. Okay? Just the mental model is very important. And the one of the key how here, right? The what and the why is out there, right? The systems have to be responsive. What we mean by responsive is when a user makes an action, they get to know what happened, right? Even if the system is under some type of stress, they could just get a message back saying that, hey, we are facing some difficulties. Please try again after some time or something like that. But user immediately gets a feedback from the system. That is what is responsive. Resilient is again like once part of the system fails, the entire system doesn't go down. Elastic is there are spiky traffic, and whenever there is a spiky traffic, the entire system doesn't go down, right? It means that your system can scale up and scale down whenever. Right? As the spiky traffic comes, your system doesn't go down. Maybe there is some lag, but your system can gracefully scale up and handle all those requests. Now, all of those things, the how part of it is solved using asynchronous message passing. What is asynchronous message passing? This is what we mean by the message-driven component here in the reactive manifesto. So let's start with what we mean by asynchronous message passing. And this is really, really key when we think about event-driven systems. Okay. So what is asynchronous message passing? Let's start with that. The difference, first of all, the difference between a message and an event is a message has an address. Okay, the message has an address of where it should go to, whereas an event doesn't. So, asynchronous, what do we mean by asynchronous here in asynchronous message passing? So, first of all, what is asynchronous message passing? Let's say you make a function call from function A to function B. It can be thought of function A telling function B, passing some message to function B. Say, hey, invoke is a message probably with some input parameters, right? And in synchronous message passing, what happens when function A calls function B, the function B, executes and returns the response back. What is asynchronous message passing? That's a different way of thinking. Okay, it's all driven by promises. Right? Function A sends a message to function B. Okay, saying that hey, you need to do this. These are the inputs. Function B doesn't respond immediately, and function A isn't waiting for function B's response. That is asynchronous. And that is a critical mental model when it comes to even thinking in terms of events. So first of all, when we are designing, microservices, very large scale microservices that don't have low latency requirements and high performance low latency requirements, you need to consider reactive manifesto. Okay. Now, if you are like into high frequency trading, those type of domains where the computations are very high, like physics simulations, those for those scenarios, obviously, the reactive manifesto asynchronous message passing may or may not make sense. Okay. However, in any place where you are okay with a 100 to 200 millisecond latency, reactive manifesto following it makes perfect sense. Okay. It makes perfect sense. Now, again, I want to call out the difference between latency and throughput. Okay. Reactive systems can support very high throughput, very high throughput. That's the number of requests that comes. But the reactive systems or event-based systems or message-based systems, the per request time might be little higher than a declarative orchestration-based system. Okay, little higher, not too much. Also, it's not like so much that it's intolerable. Like you have your food delivery apps, you have your car transportation app like Uber. All of these things can work in the reactive way. But, there is no problem at all. There are some nuanced places where it won't. However, in most places, these would work very well for you. So if you are thinking in terms of designing a mic set of microservices, more often than not, just go in the reactive way. Okay? Use this reactive manifesto; it will help you. Okay. Now coming to the fun topic, like what is an event-driven system? Okay. So it has three concepts in it: events, driven, and system. Okay. So first of all, what is an event? So the way to think about it, and this is I am taking inspiration from the domain-driven design world. Right? The way to think about an event is any state change that happens in your service, which has business significance. That's the fun part. It needs to have a business significance. Okay. And in order to do that, we need to identify who those actors are. Right? Like in this case, let's say in the example that you see here, it's an e-commerce shopping, right? A person who's doing some shopping on an e-commerce site, right? In the subsequent talks, I will definitely cover how to do domain-driven design, and when we do those, I will further dive deep into it. This is an introductory talk. Again, I'm not hyping up the future talks for sure, but this is an introductory talk, and I want to keep it within time. So I will just give like a overview of thinking in terms of events, and then the subsequent future presentations. I will cover how to do DDD as well. Okay. Now, the first topic I covered, or the first point I covered is event. Now, driven. What do we mean by driven? This is just another term for orchestration, right? Events orchestrated system is also something we can use, right? So here, what happens is, like in the declarative orchestration, API calls were being made, right? In an event-driven system, that's not the case. It's different. It's a different mental model altogether. In an event-driven system, what happens is an order service, for example, is completely unaware of, say, a shipping service, an accounting service, a notification service. It doesn't know anything. It just focuses on doing one thing really well, which is order processing. Okay. Now, order processing could be just entering something in the database. That's it. Right? I say, hey, I received this order. And then there could be like inventory system that says, hey, we have inventory for it or not. Then there is the shipping service which will say, hey, we can ship this or not, and a number of other things, right? But the order service is only focused on one thing, capturing that order, hypothetically, right? Like it really follows the single responsibility principle very well. The system is unaware of any other, things around orders that are there. It just processes the order, says, an order has been processed. That's it. Very simple. So the difference between like the previous, declarative orchestration flow versus this is simple. Their order service was making a call to shipping service, notification service, da 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 da. Here it's very simple. Order service gets the create order command from the user. Probably it says, what products the user wants. An order creates an event that, hey, I got this order. This is in and puts it into an order topic, right? Like let's say order service topic. That's what I'm calling here. Then there could be other consumers, like say shipping service is one consumer of this, gets to read that hey, this order has been placed, right? And then gives a feedback whether the shipping can be done, the shipping can't be done, or it if the shipping can be done, then it puts a event saying that hey, the shipping has been scheduled, right? It's a very simple flow. Like you want new logic to come up. Let's say next you want analytics logics to come up on this order service. That analytics system just starts reading this order service topic. That's all. Right? There is no change you need to do in the order service itself. It's same thing with shipping also. Did you want analytics done on shipping service? That just reads you need to do some machine learning on just to understand the shipping nuances, the shipping problems. You just read the shipping service topic, see the various shipping events that are happening, right? So that's the beauty of it. So your services are just focused on what they need to do, and they are not concerned with who is reading it, those events, right? Now let's again further dive deep into the why part of it, right? I already alluded to this. It is extremely easy to change these type of systems, right? So because like let's say when a new service is coming up that needs to do something on top of orders, it has absolutely no change needed in the order service, right? So your order service is very stable. It can focus on doing orders really well. This new service comes up, handle some business logic with the order, some new business logic perhaps, right? And that's the beauty of event-driven system. It's very easy to change. See, one other thing to notice is when we talk about change, there is a technical aspect of it, and then there is a non-technical aspect of it also. And you have to consider the non-technical aspects also in order to foster creativity. Now, what do I mean by this? So let's say there's an orders team that handles, this order service, and you want to, read this order data, do some processing on it, and then have a different customer experience. Right? Just show some banners to customers saying that, hey, you had placed these orders. Based on this, you might be interested in these n number of things. Right? There's absolutely no dependency on the orders team now. Right? You don't have to reach out to them and say, hey, make an API call whenever an order is placed because I'm interested in that data. Right? You are free to do whatever you want with that topic. And that opens up a lot of creativity. Right? Because you are not blocked on the other team. You know you have these orders coming in, you can start processing them and playing around with them. Right? So the system is very easy to change. right? It also like therefore it enhances creativity in the organization. So when you start with event-driven system, it's not just the technical benefits you have to see, you also have to observe the non-technical benefits. Okay. The second thing is these systems are very elastic. Event-driven systems by nature are very elastic because see the solutions for storing these messages or events. Usually it will be like a ESB, Enterprise Service Bus. Uh, I've seen Kafka being used. I've seen SQS SNS combo being used. There are many ways to do this, right? But ultimately, in a pub sub, it will be a very mature, stable system that can scale out, right? Really well. And it's just storing small messages, right? So it's not very complex to scale them also. It's a solved problem, right? So whenever, like, let's say there's a sudden spike in traffic, right? In the declarative orchestration world, what happens is you have one API microservice and you have another microservice. You have a barrage of requests coming to this microservice, okay, and it starts making calls to the other set of microservice. Now, even if you have auto scale up, okay, that also takes time. By the way, auto scaling is not magic; it takes time. So by the time it scales up, ideally if you have auto scaling, good. But many places I've seen that even auto scaling won't be there, right? So if you don't have auto scaling, then you're done for. Like if you have to manually go and scale, then till the time you manually scale up, a lot of requests would fail. Even if you have auto scaling, by the time it scales up, you will still have failed requests. Okay. But if you think in terms of events, if you think in terms of a buffer in between, this is your ESB. If the spike is very high also, okay, from this first service, the second service or the second consumer group consumes at the pace that it can handle. Okay. So what will happen, worst case scenario, is the messages or events that are emitted out in the ESB, unprocessed events will increase, but you will not see any API failures. Okay. So then, on the same lines, going to the third topic, it's very fault tolerant. Right? You have your high number of API calls coming through. It just buffers in the ESB, right? And the other service can consume at its own pace. But there is other aspects to fault tolerance also. Let's say this for some reason this service goes down. It can come back up and start processing the messages. One. The second thing is, let's say some issue happened with one particular node, right? It failed. It goes down. Other node can easily come up and start processing the messages that are there. The third thing is, let's say there was some error because of which the processing did not happen. You can go back in time and reprocess. That is one thing you cannot do in an API call world. Okay, you cannot reproduce from a point in time. Okay, so those are the key whys of an event-driven system. So we covered in both, like the declarative orchestration. Also, we covered three things. Right, first we saw what the declarative orchestration is, the problems of it, right, and then I talked about the Octopus service. Second, here also we are seeing what an event-driven system is, why we need to do an event-driven system, and third, I'm going to gently touch upon this. This is how to do event-driven system. Okay, I'm going to gently touch upon this in the interest of time. Okay, I'm just going to start with the how part, but in the future videos, I will definitely go more in deep depth on these topics. Okay, so the how part of event-driven system. So first thing is very crucial. Identify the key business events, and that's very important. The business events, right? So in like an ride-sharing world, for example, the key business events are that the customer placed an order. Okay, the driver on the other side, he was sent an order. He accepted an order. Okay. So first, there can be a number of other events as such also. Like if you think about a food world, right? Food delivery world, you have three actors in play. So the events are more. Whatever it is, like the key thing is identify the key business events that are going to happen in your service. Okay. One of the things, a very helpful tool, and this I came across very recently, is something called as the state charts. Okay. At each individual components, if you model it in terms of state charts, and those states itself can be events that you emit out. Okay. Again, just alluding to this fact that I will cover all these things in depth in the subsequent presentations. But to start with, one of the key things you need to do is identify the key business events. Okay. First. The second thing is be very clear on who these actors are going to be who are going to emit these events out. Right? Like I talked about customers. Okay. I talked about the driver in the ride sharing example. So in your domain, who are the key actors? You need to identify them also. Okay. It becomes very important to do that because from that point, from that mental model, you can also think of other, events that can come in the system. But even bigger reason why to do that is we create something called as a bounded context. Again, I'll allude to this. This is something very deep into domain-driven design. In the subsequent talks, I will cover this. Third one is we talked about the key business events, the actors and inputs. You can intuitively say these set of events belong in one system, these set of events belong in other system. So create those subsystems, and though each of those subsystems will advertise those events when they happen. Okay, and going back, how those events will be sent, what are the valid transition of events, etc. We can use state machines or state charts. There is a website statecharts.dev which covers state charts in depth. Okay, and subsequently I'll also do a talk on state charts. It's a very good tool to model finite states. Okay. So yeah, so three key things you need to do when you are thinking about building an event-driven system. Identify the key business events, identify the actors, and create subsystems that tell about these events when they happen via a pub/sub mechanism, an ESP. But the key reason why to do that is to enable asynchronous message passing, like we talked about in the reactive manifesto section. Okay. So now the next steps. So I think I've covered well of what event-driven systems are and why you need to do this. Right, three things, right? What those event-driven systems are, why you need to do this, and how you can do this. In the next steps, what I'll do in the subsequent presentations that I put up is I will cover domain-driven design in depth. Okay, this is a starting point, and you can do good number of designs with just this much knowledge. This is not the next videos are not a blocker for you to start thinking in terms of the three house that I talked about: identifying the events, identifying the actors, and building the subsystems that advertise those events. Right, that's good. Now the in the subsequent talks, presentations, I will go further down deep into it, but that's not necessary for you to start building those systems. So what I'll say, that's an exercise. Go and start building those systems. Go and think about your own systems that you have in your company, right? How you can model it in an event-driven fashion. Okay, one. The second next step is we also talked about specific implementations of these pub subsystems. It could be Kafka, it could be Redis. There are multiple implementations that you can use. I have a personal preference of one ESB. In the next talk, I will talk about, in the subsequent talks, not in the next talks. I apologize for that. In the subsequent talks, I will talk about how to implement, like in actual, I'll do a code walkthrough of an actual pub sub system. Right? We will build a system like via live coding, where there will be a pub sub system running, like a deployment of a pub sub. I will give you some hints of how to do the deployments well also in order to handle these scales. And that is like slightly going into the DevOps world. Okay, but we will cover those as well. Right? Those are the two things that we will do for sure. And third thing, as the next step, is I will cover state charts. When we think about event-driven systems, domain-driven design is very key. How to do pub sub becomes again super important. And the third thing is, I just personally prefer it, is how to model these states or these events in individual systems. That also becomes very important, and that we will cover in the next steps. All right, I hope you had fun. There is some problem with the lighting here, but I hope you guys had fun, and see you in the subsequent presentations. Thank you.